Welcome to On Block Off Block by AeroCloud. On Block Off Block explores the exciting and ever-growing aviation industry with guests working in and with airports, and is hosted by AeroCloud CEO George Richardson.
In this episode, George speaks to Kamal Patel, the Technology Transformation Manager at London Luton Airport, on some of the changes in technology he's seen in his 26-year tenure at the airport, how using AI and passenger empowerment can be leveraged more in aviation, and some of Kamal's expertise and insights on cybersecurity.
Kamal, thank you very much for joining me.
No problem at all.
I remember when we first met back in 2018, I believe. Myself and Ian were at PTE, and we were kind of building a pipeline to sort of start our, maybe even early actually, to start our business. Did you remember when we first met? And was it at PTE?
I think it must have been actually at PTE, and having worked with Ian for decades, really, he certainly grew quite close as a sort of professional relationship, having worked many late nights on various projects together and implementing things. So it was it was interesting and pleasing for me to see how you guys have partnered up and were deciding to develop your own set of products and services, etc. And always keen to see positive people doing well.
Thank you. Brilliant. Well, fast forward to last year, we started working together finally after all that time, sort of formally.
Yes.
Where AeroCloud won a public tender at LTN to replace the legacy PPS solution under your leadership. We won that, and over loads of back and forth, we had a year of sort of going back and forth and planning. We were finally here, and just last week, we were actually on site celebrating the implementation. So thank you so much for your continued support in our business and the part that you had to play for that. We're very grateful for the opportunity, and the platform, as most airports now are moving into the cloud. It's been talked about for an awful lot of a long time, and we believe that the future is incredibly bright for our partnership at LTN. So thank you very much for that. Kamal,
Pleasure.
You've been at Luton now for 26 years. You've
Yes.
driven many of organisational and innovation change across the airport. You've really seen this airport grow. Could you take us back to sort of what got you in to Luton to start with, and why aviation has become your vocation from a technology perspective?
I think when I was looking for the role at London Luton Airport, what I was looking for was something that had a very dynamic environment and lots of opportunities to learn on all sorts of different technology platforms. My background was in electronics, electrical engineering, defense industries, various other things. So this was really at the very early stages of the IT industry as we would recognize it today. And so through my previous role, I managed to obtain some really good experience on implementing what you would refer to as modern IT network infrastructures, etc. And I decided to shift across to London Luton Airport, both because of the strength of the brand and the recognition, but also the dynamic and variety of the environment. Because for me, it's all about looking for those learning opportunities in whatever you do, and having something interesting happening all of the time, because work can become very stale and monotonous without that sort of dynamic environment for somebody like me who's a techie at heart, really.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, you don't have a huge team, which means that you're working on these problems in real time. We joke, don't we, that both of our jobs we kind of 24/7, and we have been for a long period of time, and you sort of get used to being on call. What is the most important aspect of making sure that the airport has the right technology at the right time for its trajectory of growth?
I think the operation is everything. For us, there is an obligation to deliver really efficient, effective operational service for our passengers. Looking at it from a passenger's perspective as well, it's also to create an environment where there is a reliable service being provided and a consistent, effective service being provided, which, for the passengers, whether they're regular travelers or not, it's a stressful experience going through an airport. And, there are lots of elements which are out of your control. So the more predictable and consistent we can make that service, it's certainly better for us, better for our passengers, and it helps the airport, build a really strong reputation in the market for delivering services which are appropriate for the type of passengers who want to fly with us. For me, that's really key, both wearing an operational hat and a traveller's hat as well.
Yeah, massive infrastructure constraints, obviously, in an airport. Technology plays a huge part in that. And the other thing that not a lot of people talk about for the operators of the airport is that, everything that you do, quote unquote, that is wrong is in the public domain.
Yes,
How often have you had those sleepless nights and just, read a comment or had a complaint or whatever, and you just think, wow, if anyone actually knew what we were actually going through here. I mean, it's in very public, right? And that's a major issue with mission critical solutions for sure.
Absolutely, yeah. So, it's a classic IT, dilemma that, nobody comes to talk to you and congratulate you when things are working and going well. But as soon as things stop working or there's any disruption, then you've got a target on your back. And so from my point of view, when we look at systems, when we look at the design of the infrastructure that sits behind those systems, resilience is key. And from an airport operations point of view, the traditional model has been to avoid moving things into environments where you have less or no control. And that's how the cloud has traditionally been viewed in that way, as being a significant risk, because you're introducing a number of points of failure into that infrastructure over which you don't have any direct control. The traditional model is always to have all of the infrastructure physically on site with trained personnel around it to ensure that infrastructure is available, and also in the event of a disaster, you have really known and controllable recovery plans around those systems as well. I think that model is changing somewhat because we now have more confidence in the infrastructures that we can put in and the design of those infrastructures. Also, we have more effective monitoring tools around cloud infrastructures and cloud services, which again, give us more confidence that the risk does not outweigh the benefit anymore. I think that equation or that balance has tipped recently in terms of, if you have on-site infrastructure, the traditional models, you are constantly going through a replenishment refresh cycle from a physical equipment and hardware point of view. And you also had responsibility for maintaining, servicing and powering all of that infrastructure. You then ended up at the end of the process with depreciated asset to dispose of. And those sorts of discussions, whilst they won't go away in every aspect, are reduced. And let's face it, the costly part of the infrastructure is the server back end and the data storage, etc. So from our point of view, it made sense through this recent project that we did to explore all of the options that are out there. And one of the key requirements for our RFP was to identify and understand how each of the potential suppliers would be providing that infrastructure, and to look at that infrastructure both from a resiliency and a scalability point of view.
Yeah, agreed. And, you're an innovator in your space, in the space, effectively. And I know that moving to AeroCloud as a platform, as a solution, was not necessarily always easy as maybe putting sort of back in the legacy internally. So I thank you for that. But confidence obviously takes an awful long time to build. And, we'd been talking about this for... Well, we're not talking about this specifically, but we're talking about doing something together for an awful long time. And when the RFP came out, I think that it was written in such a way that made the vendors want to put something forward that would be better for the airport in the long time. In the long term, relaying back to that piece about getting the passengers through quicker, easier. It is a stressful environment for everybody, but that trust and confidence that's taken all of that time to build can also be lost pretty much overnight, like all sort of conferences are. So have you had any other big projects at LTN that you've been successful in moving away from the legacy? And, with the way that things are going at LTN with regards to the PPS platform now, we very much hope that confidence sustains.
Yeah, so when we have been looking at new projects or replacement infrastructure projects. I think the mindset that we are now going into those projects with is not necessarily to stick with the traditional suppliers and take for or blindly accept that their solutions are necessarily the best fit for us. I think, those legacy providers, the ones who've been established in the industry for many, many years, I think are all going through or suffering from the disruption that's happening in the space, because we have innovative organizations like AeroCloud coming into the market, really questioning how those legacy infrastructures are designed and delivered and managed, maintained long term. And I think that the legacy providers have invested so heavily in providing those deeply rooted solutions into organizations that they're kind of shackled by it in many ways. And it also reduces the amount of dynamic flexibility that you would have as an organization or as a user of those systems, in that, once you've contracted with those organizations, you are not going to see a lot of innovation and change on those platforms during the period of the contract. One of the key requirements for us when we're looking at new technologies and new solutions is that, okay, we know technology changes. We know the rate of change in technology is increasing all the time. And we know that there's going to be AI and all sorts of other disruptive technologies coming online during the course of this contract. So why would we want to fix our technology at point of time of signing the contract when we know full well there may be capabilities, technologies that we might want to take advantage of to improve the systems in the future? And so really that's key for me when I'm looking at the supply chain, when I'm looking at the new and innovative organizations that are entering the space, is really to understand not just what they have in terms of products and services now, but also, what their roadmap, what their thoughts and development ambitions look like going forward, particularly if we're going to be contracting with them either as a framework supplier or as a supplier of critical services.
Absolutely. And a big part of that also is the people that you hire and the people that are in your team. Because if the people that you hire have a previous mentality and the people that are already there have the previous mentality, then they won't push the vendors like us to produce the results that the airport needs of the future and the requirements the airport needs of the future. How difficult is it to attract and retain top talent at an airport like Luton? You have a large catchment area, but what are you seeing now about the people that want to work at Luton, and what sort of initiatives have you got in place?
Recruitment's a challenge, actually, in the IT space per se. And I think, recruiting within IT at the airport is particularly challenging at the moment. I think people will, IT staff will come in and they will either love the environment and love the challenge, or, very quickly realize that they've bitten off an awful lot of operational responsibility, because, as you said before, it's not a 9 to 5 environment with a small amount of predictable infrastructure. There's so much going on site, and when things go wrong at the airport, it very quickly becomes national and international news, depending on the nature of things. So, I think from a recruitment point of view, what I have tried to do is actually develop from within and also identify people in the organization. They may be working in other parts of the organization who have an interest or have perhaps studied something at university, but not had the opportunity to get into an IT role. And through that, through either workplace secondments or other means, give them the opportunity to experience what it is to work within the IT environment within an airport, and also how that differs from lots of other, office-based environments, in terms of you're less behind the keyboard and you're more, running around the airport, making things happen and making sure that all of the users of the airport have got the services that they need to deliver a good experience for the passengers.
Yeah, it's also an incredibly visible role. I mean, when we've spent time on site, there's everybody stopping you sort of asking for directions to whatever or how things work.
Yes.
All the staff are super patient about that. It's one thing that other people, I think, from the exterior don't really realize about airports is that the people that are actually working at the airport have a job to do. They have a face to keep with general members of the public. They have to deal with general members of the public, which typically is not that easy. And they're also very operational, and then they're also criticized and pushed to be even more strategic. So,
Yes.
I think 90% of your week is probably spent being operational, 10% is being strategic. But actually, the board and the rest of the airport demands to be more strategic, but it's sometimes impossible, especially peak months. You have a huge winter traffic, for example, and a big summer traffic peaks. Super hard to balance. And that should be a challenge that people welcome and want to be part of, in my opinion. And that's what I find exciting. But not everybody.
Exactly, yes.
It's not fit for everybody, is it?
No, so, it's quite scary for some people, depending on your sort of outlook on challenges and your personality type. I think, if you want a quiet life and a sort of a safe working environment, joining an IT department in that respect is, going to take you out of your comfort zone. For myself, I welcome that. I think that keeps, life at work really interesting. And it's through those, significant events that we learn the most, and I can remember when the early days of my career at the airport, systems were not that reliable. We just implemented things like, Cat5 networks, and it was literally the days of CRT monitors, and you're up on ladders with special lifting gear, changing flight information screens. The work environment has changed, or the technology that we work with has changed so massively. And we've been through, over that sort of 26-year period, we've literally replaced everything from an IT infrastructure and services point of view, over multiple generations of technology. So from a learning environment, you're just constantly on the lookout for what is coming next. And, that is why, in many ways, I think I've been at the airport for so long, because every day's a school day. And you feel like there's going to be a challenge to meet every time you get out of bed in the morning. And for a personality like mine, I think that's what I need.
Yeah, and that's what drives us, I think. But one thing I think is really interesting as well is that I think people don't really realise, especially when the people are coming into putting in big solutions or coming in outside as a new hire into an airport or an existing hire, is that, you don't actually have loads of sort of aviation geeks, right? There's no one there, not no one, but the majority of people are there for the mission critical nature of what we all do. And what is interesting about your airport and many other airports is that you're a shopping centre, you're a hub for police, fire, you're a car parking business, you're every facet of commerce effectively under one roof. And that is a real challenge. And that complexity is what would drives you and what would drive many people, I hope, joining the organisation there at LTN. So we talked a little bit and touched on a sort of AI and where the future of technology in aviation or airports is going. What sort of deep areas of your expertise do you think that will be disrupted, changed, or enabled through the adoption of either AI or any trends that you see coming in the next sort of medium term, maybe 5 years?
I think from what I sort of hearing and seeing and understanding, I think is about empowering the passenger. And using the technologies that are available to us, or updating the technologies that we have deployed in our environment to ensure that, we are communicating much better with the passenger where they need that information, on their mobile phones, on other devices that they have access to, prior to them leaving their house to travel to the airport. It's also partnering with all the other linked service providers, be it, road networks, railway networks, etc. And, giving the passengers a single point of information to understand what their end-to-end journey is going to be like, and whether there is any on-the-day disruption or changes or adaptations they need to make. From an airport operations point of view, I can see security solutions, ANPR, facial recognition, biometrics, all of these things, they're evolving, but I don't think they're at the stage where they are making it easier for the passenger. What they are doing is, helping our security and operational teams to understand better what is going on in the environment at a point in time, and whether that is, going to cause any deviation from their planned day of operation, and allow them to adapt their resources and their approaches to ensure that they continue to provide a really good service for the passengers who are using the airport on that day. I think also in the area of airport disruption, for whatever reason, I think all of these communication technologies will come into much more effective play, particularly where we have things like terminal evacuations or mass cancellations, various other things. We'll be able to manage that passenger experience much more effectively, once we have some more thought through solutions, better design solutions where we can share data from all over the network, if you like, with passengers and keep them better informed.
Yeah, we talked about as well in previous conversations that the business is now very interested in that data. Margins are tougher, costs of running a businesses are increasing effectively throughout the board, staff are demanding more pay, etc., etc. So the airport needs to be even more profitable and efficient. And that data lives everywhere. And
yes.
The thing is, you have so much of it, and you also have so much of it historically. What is the first sort of glaringly obviously challenge to getting all that data into one place? And how does that look like? And what, as a sort of high level, is your strategy to do so?
I think what we've done in recent years is really look at our supply chain and understand the products and services that are being provided to us and what the potential for data ingestion is for those systems. And I think it's also pushing suppliers to think a little bit more about the data they could share with us and how in a modern infrastructure that data can be made available for us as the end users to ingest into our own systems and design, whether it's reports, dashboards, or other communication systems that can detect deviations from the normal or planned operation. So we think when we're tendering for new systems, data is one of the core objectives for us to address, whereas in the past it may not have been as front and center, but it allows us to measure performance and also allows us to provide the best possible service to our passengers when we have that full cognizance of the data and any changes to that data on the day of operation.
Yeah, we talk about security, and you're an expert in security, cybersecurity. LTN, I'm sure, is a target for the obvious, given its global importance and its, feeding the UK into many destinations across Americas and Europe, etc., etc. How do we make sure that we scale safely from a cyber perspective? What can our listeners sort of look out for? What's the sort of Kamal's easy checklist for sort of cybersecurity people interested in this at airports, and how can they do that safely?
From a cybersecurity point of view, the airports in the UK are identified as critical national infrastructure. So, in the same way as the power and water companies, ferry ports, railways and airports are all covered by the NIS regulations, which is the Network Information Systems regulations, which came into force around 2018 in the UK. And it's across the whole of the EU. We've harmonised the NIS regulations with the EU as well. On the back of that, we work quite closely with the regulators, the Department for Transport and the CAA, who provide both carrot and stick to the airports in terms of ensuring that we have a baseline cyber approach and set of controls and requirements that we implement within the airport. And also there is an audit function with the CAA, which will periodically come and take a look at what we have, how we do it, what we're reporting, what we're measuring, and ensure that the controls that we have in place from a cybersecurity point of view are effective. Within LLA, we also have a cybersecurity team who are focused on staying ahead of the regulation and also keeping in touch with what's going on in the world at large. We understand that there is a very volatile global picture at the moment in terms of different threat actors and different targeting of industries in the UK and globally, particularly amongst our allies globally. We're all sort of undergoing the same pressures and attacks from much the same threat actors. And so what we try and do is ensure that we're not the easiest target. And we work quite closely with the National Cybersecurity Centre to ingest the information of the threat picture from them, the threat to critical national infrastructure. We work with the industry as well, the heads of cybersecurity at lots of the other airports, airlines, etc. And we have really good, clear information sharing and cooperative approaches from a cybersecurity perspective. What we also do is take time to share information and share incidents with our industry partners. And it's an uncompetitive space, let's say, from when we're talking about cybersecurity. We as a cybersecurity community within airports, don't really see the competitive nature of our organizations. It's about everybody wanting everybody else to be successful and do well with whatever controls and information that they are handling.
I love
so
that.
yeah, it's a refreshing way of looking at something that could be quite a private or ring-fenced set of operational practices. Actually, there's so much more to be gained in taking that cooperative approach.
Yeah, and that's super interesting about sort of airports in the UK, and the same with our businesses that we sell to as well in the US, or airports that we sell to, that there is that sort of combined thinking, and I love that community aspect. Yeah, I think your deep industry expertise there will be of much help to the groups. So yeah, thank you for that on behalf of all the customers, I'm sure. So we talked a lot about your superpowers. We talked a lot about your role, what makes it special, what makes it unique. And a couple of closing things as we sort of near out here is, one, if you're open to it, are you a LinkedIn user? Are you a Twitter user? How can people get in touch with you?
Yes, so I'm on LinkedIn. I'm not really a big social media fan in that sense. I think LinkedIn is the one platform that I can be found on. So, happy to link up with partners, industry, colleagues, etc. And, happy to share my experience, of the sort of growth, evolution, changes that are going on within the airport world, but, the aviation world more largely as well.
Brilliant. Well, now, listeners, you can be processed using AeroCloud at LTN. Kamal, thank you so much for your continued business, your continued contact through all of these years. It's been really special to finally do some deals with you. So thank you very much for coming on to On Block, Off Block. Thanks for having us. Well, thank you for coming.
It's an absolute pleasure, and thanks to all your team for the commitment and hard work that they're putting to deliver this solution for us. It's a project that's gone really, really well for us, and certainly could have created many more sleepless nights for me, but didn't, thankfully. So I thank you all for that.
Thank you very much. Well, that's very kind of you. Thank you for that. And brilliant. Thank you very much. Speak to you soon.
Take care. Cheers.
Thank you for listening to On Block, Off Block by AeroCloud. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a review, and remember to hit the subscribe button to stay up to date with future episodes. On Block, Off Block is hosted by George Richardson and produced by Alex Greaves.